What is the spiritual response to terrorism? I admit, events like this don't automatically take me to a place of spiritual thinking. What comes up is reactionary thinking. Thinking of retribution, thinking of meeting hate with hate. But you know, and I know, that thinking is not going to help stamp out terrorism. That thinking is going to just keep it alive. Gandhi said it clearly when he said, "An eye for an eye, and the whole world becomes blind." Blinded with revenge. It becomes an excuse to treat others in the way that they treat us. We do that and we perpetuate that thinking. We may win the battle, but lose the war. I want to change our thinking to a response instead of a reaction. What is our spiritual response to hate? What came to me is that oftentimes I meet with people who've been diagnosed with cancer. And I urge them not to hate the cancer, not to hate their bodies, as that energy will not facilitate healing. It will cause more harm than good. We have to muster our energy in that situation and apply it to the healing energy, the loving energy, in order to come back to a place of harmony within our bodies and within ourselves. I had a cancer scare years ago. I didn't blame my body. And I was able to address the issue without any negative energy. And I believed it aided in my body's ability to neutralize it. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't take action and treat the cancer. We may have surgery, we may have drugs, we may have chemotherapy, there's all kinds of treatments. Having a spiritual response does not mean we do nothing. Quite the contrary, we do what we need to do on the physical plane. But we do not drop to a lower level of consciousness, that being meeting hate with hate, because we know if we deal with it on that level, things will just get worse. A spiritual response is not the typical reactionary response that we have. But spiritual masters compel us to change our thinking, to not get pulled down to the lowest common denominator, to not get pulled down to low consciousness and live from the place that the people are attacking us are coming from. The Bible and many other spiritual texts remind us about how we should change our thinking. In the Bible it says, if you're compelled to carry a soldier's load 1 mile, which was the law back then, you carry it 2 miles. Why? Because you're changing the paradigm when you do. Jesus talked about turning the other cheek. He would say, do you only love those who love you? Even the Gentiles do that. Do we only love those who love us? Deborah sang that song that we're so familiar with, and we can sing it rotely and maybe not take on the meaning every week. So I asked her to slow it down and do more of a ballad so we can hear those words. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. The only way we conquer hate is in our own consciousness. And if we don't conquer it here, we become a victim. Or worse, we become a perpetrator. We don't have to look back far in American history to see when attacked, how we respond, and then we regret it later on. When Pearl Harbor happened, and then we threw all the Japanese Americans in internment camps. We look back on that now with shame. Martin Luther King Jr. said this: "Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that." Those are lofty words, but it's the truth. This is how we change the world. We have to start within. This is what the evolution of consciousness is all about. It's not getting pulled back into might makes right, but to be pushing forward and saying, I am not going to hate. In fact, the Dalai Lama said, someone else's actions should not determine your response. So first and foremost, I believe the spiritual response is not to meet hate with hate. And that's only accomplished in our consciousness and in our hearts. If we can do one thing, and we can, it's to not hate. That's a huge leap forward in the evolution of our consciousness. And if we want to bring about change that's going to last, it means we don't meet hate with hate. So when you walk out these doors today, if there's one thing that you know you can do to change the world, is that I am not going to hate. That would be a huge step forward. When I was in London working as an expat many years ago, the IRA was still making bomb threats and shutting down the tube, which was my method of transportation to work every day. I remember the first time I felt threatened when there was this kind of a threat. I looked around, I talked to my friends, the Brits that I worked with, and I saw that how are they going to respond to this? And you know what they did? They got on with their life. They were not going to let the threat keep them cowering in their homes. If they did that, then the terrorists, they said, would have already won. Now let's remember that that was a conflict between Catholics and Protestants. That did not make every Catholic or Protestant a terrorist. So let us not treat all Muslims with that prejudice of terrorist. Already, right after this happened, there's a backlash from countries about denying entrance to the Syrian refugees because of this attack. Because they're being branded as all of them as extremists. If we sow isolation and treat them like they are extremists, then that's what we're going to reap. So I thought long and hard. What's ours to do in this moment? I believe it's time for action, to do something positive and loving in the light of these recent events. Now, honestly, I don't know how to take someone who's already been radicalized and to change their mind. I really don't know. But I want to reach out to those Syrian refugees who are coming to this country and show them love and support. There's an organization called the International Rescue Committee that's been founded in 1933. It's the oldest and largest non-sectarian voluntary organization providing relief, protection, and resettlement services for refugees and victims of oppression or violent conflict around the globe. The IRC helps people whose lives and livelihoods are shattered by conflict and disaster to survive, recover, and gain control of their future. The IRC in Northern California was established in San Francisco in 1975, in response to the needs of the arriving Vietnamese refugees. And by the way, one of those refugees I had lunch with a few days ago, and you know her, Nguyen Vuong. She was a refugee from Vietnam. So what we're going to do as a community is we're going to give this organization $2,000, and we're going to direct it to helping Syrian refugees. And that's part of being here, part of the money you've given, that's where that's going, to help them. And as I finished this talk in the first service, and a person came through the line, and they said, you know what, I'm going to match that. I'm going to give you $2,000 so we can give $4,000. See, first and foremost, it begins with our hearts and our minds. Let us not foster hate. Let's make a positive impact. A positive impact in the world, especially to those who are fleeing the people who perpetuated this recent tragedy. I want those people, I want that next generation who's moving here and moving to Europe to not believe what they're being told about that this is a religious war or the West will never accept you. Let's not play into that. If we can make them feel loved, accepted, and not have prejudice toward them, then they're going to see that they were being told lies. So I don't know how to change people that have already been radicalized, but I believe by us doing something like this, that this is a step in the future of assuring those people who are coming here that they get the impression and the right impression that we are a loving country and community that embraces them for all of who they are, so that they don't become radicalized because of the way we treat them. This is what it means to have a spiritual response to terrorism. The denial, which I'm just going to tell you because we didn't put it up on the screen. I will not be ruled by hate. And together, I will not be ruled by hate. In the affirmation, I'll say it first. Peace begins with me. Peace begins with me.